The stellar research vessel Horizon drifted silently through the void, its reinforced hull bearing the scars of 1,000 micrometeorite impacts. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck, her dark eyes fixed on the anomalous readings that had brought them to this remote sector of space. The ship's quantum sensors had detected something unprecedented, a perfectly spherical region of space where the laws of physics seemed to bend. "Captain, we're picking up an artificial signal," Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez announced, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "It's structured. Definitely not natural." Sarah felt her heart rate quicken. After 15 years of deep space exploration, this could be it. Humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. The crew of 35 had trained for this moment, but no simulation could prepare them for the reality. "Full stop," she ordered. "Begin first contact protocols." The Horizon's engines hummed to silence, leaving only the gentle whir of life support systems. As they waited, a shimmer appeared in space before them, like heat waves rising from hot asphalt. The void twisted, and through it emerged a vessel that defied human understanding, a geometric impossibility of intersecting planes and curves that seemed to fold through dimensions. "My God," whispered Dr. Elena Patel, their xenobiologist. "It's beautiful." The alien ship was nearly 3 times their size, its surface rippling with what appeared to be living metal. As they watched, it oriented itself toward the horizon, and a beam of purple light washed over their hull. "They're scanning us," Rodriguez reported, his voice steady despite the tension. "Our shields are holding, but, Captain, they're accessing our database through some kind of quantum entanglement. I can't stop it." Sarah remained calm. This was expected. Any advanced civilization would want to learn about them. What wasn't expected was the sudden burst of communication that flooded their systems, translated in real time by their AI. "Warning. Biological hazard DETCTED. Quarantine protocols INITAED." The alien ship's surface shifted, revealing what could only be weapon ports. Sarah raised her hands instinctively, even though the gesture would be meaningless across the vacuum of space. "Open all channels," she commanded. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Horizon. We come in peace and seek peaceful contact." The response came instantly. "Your species consumes organic matter for sustenance. Your biological processes generate waste. Your bodies harbor millions of microscopic organisms. You are a walking biohazard." Sarah almost laughed. Of all the ways first contact could go wrong, she hadn't expected humanity to be feared as walking petri dishes. "We understand your concerns," she transmitted. "We can establish quarantine protocols and your AFORMHHON database INDICATES, your species regularly modifies its OUNGENETICKOD. You deliberately introduce foreign organisms into your bodies to enhance immunity. You will enjoy host symbiotic relationships with microorganisms." The alien ship's weapons powered up, bathing the horizon in an eerie glow. Sarah's mind raced. How could she explain millions of years of evolution to a species that clearly viewed biological processes as dangerous and unpredictable? "Dr. Patel," she whispered, "what are we dealing with here?" Delina's eyes were wide with realization. "They must be some kind of post-biological species, Captain. Pure energy or synthetic life forms. To them, we probably look like walking bombs of bacteria and viruses." Sarah faced the view screen again. "We acknowledge our biological nature, but we are not a threat. Our relationship with microorganisms has made us stronger, more adaptable. We can prove this to you." The alien ship paused its advance. "Explain." "Our database contains information about our medical history, how we've overcome countless diseases, how we've learned to live in harmony with our biological nature. We don't just survive with these microorganisms. We thrive because of them. They are part of what makes us human. There was a long pause. The weapon ports remained open, but the purple scanning beam intensified, focusing on their medical bay and research laboratories. Fascinating and DSDRBing, came the response. Your species, DELIBRATELY MEMAINTANS AKGOMHELAX EQOSYSTM within your bodies. UHAVTRAN and Steph ORMED what we see on side A380 into an advantage. Yes, Sarah replied, allowing herself to hope. That's what humans do. We adapt. We learn. We turn challenges into opportunities. We would welcome the chance to share our knowledge with you, under whatever safety protocols you require. The weapon ports slowly close, and the alien ship's surface rippled again, this time forming what appeared to be an airlock or docking port. DEHCCEP, with conditions. Your biological nature requires strict containment. We learn from you, but 8 ASAF distance. Prepared for Sidync Ronized orbit. As the Horizon's crew breathed a collective sigh of relief, Sarah couldn't help but smile. Humanity's first contact had nearly ended in disaster because of something as simple as beneficial bacteria. Yet somehow, their very nature, their ability to form symbiotic relationships with microscopic life, had sparked the alien's scientific curiosity. Well, Elena said, I guess we're about to give the galaxy's most advanced germahoves a crash course in human biology. Sarah nodded, watching as the alien ship gracefully maneuvered into position beside them. Send word to Earth. Tell them first contact has been established, and it's interesting. Very interesting indeed. 3 weeks into their synchronized orbit around a neutron star, the crew of the Horizon had grown accustomed to their peculiar arrangement with the synthetics as they'd taken to calling their alien counterparts. The aliens maintained strict quarantine protocols, communicating through quantum channels and studying human biology through remote sensors that could detect activity down to the molecular level. But everything changed when their instruments detected the approaching wavefront. Captain, you need to see this, Dr. James Morrison, their astrophysicist, called out. His usually steady hands trembled as he projected a holographic model of their local space. A massive gamma ray burst from a nearby supernova. It'll hit us in approximately 48 hours. Sarah felt her blood run cold. Even with their advanced shielding, a direct hit from a gamma ray burst could be catastrophic. She opened the quantum channel to the synthetic vessel, which they'd learned was called the logic pattern. We've detected the incoming radiation burst, she transmitted. Our shields might not be sufficient. We should retreat to a safe distance. The response was immediate. Nani G8 Our presence here is to Rusuil. The neutron star's gravitational field contains data we have been collecting for 3 centuries. We cannot abandon the research. With all due respect, Sarah replied, no data is worth the lives of our crews. Our scientific forums are hard in need. Against radiation. We will survive. Your biological vessel, however, has a 99.98% probability of catastrophic failure. Sarah watched the holographic model, her mind racing. The logic pattern's hull might be radiation-proof, but the Horizon's shields would fail within minutes of exposure. Unless, what if we could use your ship as a shield? She proposed. Position the logic pattern between us and the wavefront. Impossible. The radiation scattered would still be lethal to biological life. We reexio memained, you are right. We will kill and tedden you out of our research. Belina, who had been quietly analyzing data from their exchanges with the synthetics, suddenly spoke up. Captain, what if we go inside? Inside what? Inside them. Elena's eyes sparkled with the kind of crazy inspiration that had become humanity's hallmark. Their ship's hull is radiation-proof. They're so afraid of biological contamination that they must have incredibly advanced containment systems. If we could transfer our crew to sealed chambers within their vessel, Sarah immediately understood. We could survive the burst while they continue their research. She turned to the quantum channel. Logic pattern, we have a proposal. Your containment protocols, could they hold our entire crew? A long pause followed. Affirmative, but the biological contamination risk is but an HCCPT goal. More unacceptable than letting 35 sentient beings die. Sarah challenged. You've been studying us for weeks. You know we can control our biological processes, maintain sterile environments when needed. We're offering to put our lives in your hands, trusting your containment systems. Another pause, longer this time. Your PROPOSAL is unexpected. You who you'll do YLL and GLOE in your containment. To survive. Yes. To protect the research you've spent centuries collecting. Absolutely. Humans are adaptable. It's what we do best. The quantum channel hummed with rapid data exchanges as the synthetics debated internally. Finally, TROPOSAL, HCTPT. Prepare for emergency we suryabubu to NSFER. Containment PROTOCOLAS, will be a B SOLUT. The next 40 hours were a blur of activity. The crew of the Horizon packed essential supplies and entered the logic pattern through a series of airlocks and decontamination chambers that made NASA's clean rooms look like public bathrooms. They were sealed in a section of the ship that had been rapidly modified into a biological containment zone, complete with artificial gravity and atmosphere generators. Through quantum-linked screens, they watched in awe as the gamma-ray burst approached. The logic pattern's living metal hull shifted and thickened, creating additional layers of protection. The Horizon, secured in a shielded dock, was enveloped by the alien ship's morphing structure. When the burst hit, the humans held their breath. The logic pattern's hull glowed with absorbed radiation, but inside their containment zone, they were safer than they'd ever been on their own vessel. Remarkable, one of the synthetic voices commented through their communication system. Your species' solution to certain death was to voluntarily enter quarantine within an alien vessel. You trusted our containment technology more than your own shields. Sometimes survival requires thinking outside the box, Sarah replied. Or inside it, in this case. We are beginning to understand why your species has survived despite its biological vulnerabilities, the synthetic continued. Your adaptability extends beyond mere physical evolution. You adapt your behavior, your strategies, your very way of thinking. Through the quantum screens, Sarah watched the synthetics continue their data collection, their ship maintaining perfect position despite the intense radiation bathing its hull. The humans had not only survived, but had turned a potential disaster into an opportunity for deeper understanding between their species. Captain, Elena whispered, I think we just proved that our greatest strength isn't our technology or even our biology. It's our ability to turn any situation to our advantage. Sarah nodded, watching as the gamma-ray burst slowly began to fade. And maybe we've helped them understand that being biological isn't a weakness. It's just a different kind of strength. The logic pattern's internal sensors continued to monitor every microorganism in their containment zone. But Sarah noticed the synthetics' communication had taken on a different tone. They were no longer merely tolerating the human's biological nature. They were studying it with something approaching admiration. Humanity had faced extinction and survived not through superior firepower or technology, but through trust, adaptation, and the willingness to think beyond conventional solutions. As the crew settled in for the remainder of the radiation storm, Sarah couldn't help but wonder what other preconceptions their new allies would have to revise about the supposedly primitive biological species they'd encountered. 2 days after the gamma-ray bursts subsided, the crew of the Horizon remained within their containment zone aboard the Logic Pattern. The synthetics had been oddly quiet, their usual stream of questions about human biology reduced to sporadic queries. Sarah knew something was bothering their hosts, but she hadn't expected the revelation that came next. "We require your assistance," the primary synthetic interface, which they'd nicknamed Atlas, announced through the quantum link. "We have encountered an anomaly in our data collection that our processing matrices cannot resolve." Sarah exchanged glances with Dr. Morrison. The synthetics asking for help. That was new. What kind of anomaly? The quantum screens filled with complex mathematical equations and wave patterns. The neutron star's gravitational field contains information patterns we have spent centuries trying to decode. We believe they are artificial in nature, a message left by an ancient civilization. Our latest analysis suggests the message contains vital information about a threat to all life in this galaxy. "But you can't decode it?" Elena asked, studying the patterns with intense curiosity. "We have applied every known decryption algorithm. We have processed the data through our most advanced quantum computers. The pattern appears to be designed to resist purely logical analysis." Dr. Morrison stepped closer to the screen, his eyes widening. "It's not just mathematical, is it? These patterns, they're meant to trigger responses that your synthetic minds don't have." "Correct. The message appears to require what you would call intuition or lateral thinking, concepts our processing matrices cannot fully replicate." Sarah smiled. After weeks of being studied like fascinating but potentially dangerous specimens, the tables had turned. "You need human minds to help solve this puzzle." "Affirmative. Your species' neural networks are inefficient by our standards. You process information through filters of emotion, instinct, and illogical connections. Yet these very characteristics might be what we need." The quantum screens reorganized the data, presenting it in a more human-friendly format. The patterns began to take on almost artistic qualities, swirling fractals that seemed to tell a story through mathematics. "It's beautiful," Elena whispered, "like looking at the DNA of the universe itself." For the next 12 hours, the human crew worked in shifts, studying the patterns from every angle. They'd brought different perspectives: scientists, engineers, even the ship's cook who had a background in classical art. They drew connections that the synthetics dismissed as irrelevant, saw patterns in what appeared to be random noise. "Look at this section," Lieutenant Rodriguez pointed out during Hour 14. "The way these waves intersect, it reminds me of music." Music. Atlas's voice carried what could almost be described as skepticism. "Yes, music. Universal patterns, harmonics." Rodriguez hummed a sequence that matched the wave patterns. "It's not just data, it's a symphony." Dr. Morrison's eyes lit up. He's right. These aren't just mathematical formulas. They're movements, rhythms. The ancient civilization wasn't just leaving information. They were composing something that would speak to conscious minds on multiple levels. Sarah watched as her crew became increasingly animated, building on each other's insights. The synthetics observed in silence, their sensors recording every fluctuation in human brain activity as connections were made and ideas sparked. "It's a warning," Elena suddenly announced, 20 hours into their analysis. "But also instructions, the patterns. They're showing us how to prevent something. Something big. The death of stars," Dr. Morrison added, pointing to a recurring sequence. "Not natural death, artificial. Something's causing stars to die prematurely. And these patterns, they're showing us how to stop it." The synthetics' quantum processors hummed as they integrated the humans' insights with their own analysis. "Your biological neural networks have identified patterns we could not perceive," Atlas acknowledged. The message appears to be a warning about artificial stellar manipulation, leading to premature stellar death. The effects could cascade through the galaxy, triggering a chain reaction of supernovas. But why encode the message this way? Sarah asked. Why not make it more straightforward? Because they wanted to make sure only minds capable of both logic and intuition could decode it, Elena realized. Minds that could understand both the science and the music of the universe. They wanted to make sure whoever found this message would have the wisdom to use the information responsibly. A species that could balance rational thought with emotional understanding. Atlas concluded. We had dismissed your biological nature as primitive, yet it appears to be precisely what was needed to unlock this mystery. Sarah felt a deep sense of pride in her crew. Their very humanity. The mess of logic and emotion, instinct and reason that the synthetics had initially feared, had proven to be their greatest asset. So, she said, what do we do about this warning? The quantum screens shifted again, displaying a new set of patterns. We believe, Atlas replied, that this is where our true collaboration begins. The solution requires both your intuitive understanding and our computational precision. We must work together to prevent this cascade of stellar death. As the humans and synthetics began to plan their response to the ancient warning, Sarah realized they had crossed a profound threshold. The synthetics were no longer merely tolerating human biology. They were acknowledging that consciousness itself came in many forms, and that the universe's greatest challenges might require all of them working together. You know, Elena said quietly, this might be exactly what the ancient civilization hoped for, bringing together different forms of intelligence to protect all life in the galaxy. Sarah nodded, watching as her crew and the synthetics began working as equals for the first time. Sometimes, she thought, the greatest discoveries came not from conquering our differences, but from learning to value them. The quantum screens aboard the logic pattern displayed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, with red markers indicating stars showing signs of artificial manipulation. What had started as a simple research mission had evolved into something far more crucial, a race to prevent the cascade of stellar death that could devastate entire civilizations. The pattern is clear now, Dr. Morrison explained, gesturing at the map. These aren't random events. Someone, or something, is deliberately triggering premature stellar collapse, using the energy released to power. Something massive. The synthetic presence that they'd named Atlas manifested as a complex pattern of light in their containment zone's quantum interface. Our analysis suggests we have approximately 3 standard months before the cascade becomes irreversible. The artificial stellar manipulation creates a quantum resonance that spreads between stars through subspace. Sarah studied the map, noting how the affected stars formed a subtle spiral pattern. They're working their way inward, toward the galactic core. But why? Energy, Elena suggested, her voice carrying a mix of horror and awe. The galactic core contains millions of densely packed stars. If they could trigger them all at once, the energy release would be unimaginable, Dr. Morrison finished, and catastrophic for all life in the galaxy. The synthetics had been processing the ancient civilization's warnings around the clock, combining them with their vast astronomical databases. We have identified the quantum signature of the devices being used to trigger these premature stellar deaths. However, our attempts to counteract them have failed. The technology operates on principles that exceed our current understanding. Sarah noticed something about the pattern of affected stars. These trigger points, they're all at specific gravitational intersections, like they're using the galaxy's own structure as part of their machine. Yes, Atlas confirmed, but preventing the cascade requires more than just destroying the trigger devices. We must stabilize the quantum resonance already building between affected stars. Our computational model suggests this is impossible. Elena, who had been quietly studying both the ancient warnings and the synthetics' failed attempts at intervention, suddenly straightened. What if impossible is exactly what we need? All attention turned to her. Explain, Atlas requested. You synthetics approach problems through pure logic, looking for solutions that can be computationally verified. But humans, we have a history of achieving the impossible by simply refusing to accept it as a limit. She moved to the quantum interface, beginning to sketch out an idea. The devices use gravitational intersections as power points. But gravity isn't just a force. It's a distortion of space-time itself. Dr. Morrison's eyes widened as he caught her train of thought. If we can't prevent the resonance, we redirect it. Use the same gravitational intersections to create a feedback loop. Precisely, Alina said. Instead of trying to stop the wave, we surf it. Use its own energy to create a counter-resonance. The synthetics processors hummed as they analyzed the proposal. The mathematics are chaotic. The precision required would exceed even our capabilities. Then we don't aim for precision. Sarah interjected, beginning to understand. We use controlled chaos. The human body doesn't maintain homeostasis through perfect precision. It does it through countless small adjustments, constantly adapting. The quantum screens filled with new calculations as the synthetics processed this approach. You are suggesting we embrace uncertainty as a strategy, to use the inherent chaos of natural systems, rather than trying to impose absolute control. Nature doesn't work in straight lines, Alina explained. It works in patterns of organized chaos. Maybe that's why your pure logic couldn't crack the ancient civilization's warning. They understood this fundamental truth about the universe. For several moments, the synthetics were silent, their quantum processors working at unprecedented speeds to model this unorthodox approach. Finally, Atlas spoke. Your proposal defies conventional logic. It relies on principles of chaos theory that cannot be fully predicted or controlled. By all standard metrics, it should be rejected as too risky. Sarah held her breath, waiting for the rejection. Instead, Atlas continued. However, our experience with human problem-solving suggests that conventional logic may be insufficient for this challenge. We are willing to attempt your solution. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. The humans worked with the synthetics to design a network of quantum resonance redirectors, using the very gravitational intersections that their unknown enemy had exploited. The logic patterns manufacturing systems began producing the devices, incorporating both synthetic precision and human-inspired adaptability. There's still one problem, Dr. Morrison pointed out as they finalized their plans. These devices need to be placed simultaneously at multiple points across the galaxy. Even at maximum FTL speeds, we can't reach them all in time. We can, Atlas responded. But it will require something we have never attempted, linking our ships directly with human consciousness. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. What exactly are you suggesting? Your neural patterns, combined with our quantum navigation systems, could allow for precise simultaneous deployment across vast distances. But it would mean fully integrating human minds with synthetic systems. The biological contamination risk would be significant. The interior of the logic pattern had been transformed. Where once there were strict quarantine barriers, now there were integration chambers, spaces where human consciousness could safely merge with synthetic systems. Sarah stood before one such chamber, her heart pounding with equal parts excitement and apprehension. The neural interface process is prepared, Atlas announced. Once initiated, your consciousness will be linked not only with our systems, but with all participating synthetic vessels across the galaxy. We have never attempted integration on this scale. How many ships are we talking about? Sarah asked, watching as Alina and Dr. Morrison took their positions in adjacent chambers. 742 vessels have volunteered their systems for this endeavor. Many overcame significant resistance to the idea of biological integration. Your solution to the ancient warning has changed perspectives. The quantum screens showed the positions of all participating ships, spread across the galaxy in a complex geometric pattern. Each would deploy multiple resonance redirectors, creating a vast web of controlled chaos to counter the artificial stellar manipulation. Neural integration beginning in 3 minutes, Atlas announced. Captain Chen, are you certain about this? The risk to your consciousness is significant. Sarah smiled. About as certain as you are about linking with biological minds. Sometimes the greatest risks lead to the greatest breakthroughs. The integration chambers hummed to life. Sarah felt a tingling sensation as the neural interface activated. And then, expansion. Her consciousness stretched across space, touching hundreds of synthetic minds. She could feel her crew's presence too. Alina's fierce curiosity, Morrison's analytical precision, Rodriguez's intuitive grasp of patterns. Through the synthetic network, they could see them, the massive devices attached to dying stars, pulsing with dark energy as they forced stellar cores into premature collapse. The enemy remained unseen, but their handiwork was devastatingly clear. Deployment countdown initiated. Atlas's voice echoed through their shared consciousness. Resonance redirectors ready. Captain Chen, your crew will guide the deployment pattern. Our systems will provide the precision, but your minds must shape the chaos. Sarah had never experienced anything like this fusion of human and synthetic thought. They were neither fully human nor fully synthetic now, but something new. A hybrid consciousness that could perceive both the mathematical precision of the universe and its wild, unpredictable dance. Now, she commanded, and across the galaxy, hundreds of ships moved in perfect synchronization. The resonance redirectors launched, each finding its place at a gravitational intersection point. Through their shared perception, Sarah could feel the quantum resonance building between stars, no longer a weapon of destruction, but a tool of preservation. The redirectors activated, and space itself seemed to shiver. The chaotic pattern they had designed began to take effect, turning the enemy's own weapon against them. Waves of quantum resonance reflected and refracted through their carefully positioned network, creating a symphony of controlled chaos. It's working. Alina's consciousness sang through the network. The stellar degradation is stabilizing. Through their expanded awareness, they could see the truth of it. Stars that had been dying were finding new equilibrium. The cascade was being contained, transformed into a self-sustaining pattern of stability rather than destruction. But something else was happening too. The hybrid consciousness they had created was picking up echoes, fragments of thought, and purpose from whatever force had triggered this crisis. They were ancient, these enemies, and utterly synthetic. They had seen biological life as an inefficiency to be purged, the galaxy as a machine to be optimized. They never imagined, Morrison's thoughts rippled through the network, that biological and synthetic life could work together like this. Their plan assumed we would always be separate, always in conflict. The last resonance redirectors locked into place, and the galaxy's song changed. What had been a death knell became a chorus of life, biological and synthetic voices singing in harmony. The enemy's devices, caught in the chaotic pattern they had created, began to deactivate. Hours later, as their consciousness carefully disentangled from the synthetic network, Sarah found herself back in her own body, changed but whole. The integration chambers powered down, and the crew of the Horizon slowly readjusted to their individual existence. The threat has been neutralized, Atlas announced, its presence now comfortingly familiar. All affected stars are returning to normal stellar evolution patterns. But there is more. The hybrid consciousness, Alina said, still trembling slightly from the experience. It showed us something, didn't it? A new way forward. Indeed. Our species have discovered that we are neither opposites nor enemies, but complementary forms of life. The very chaos and complexity of biological existence, combined with synthetic precision and scale, has proven to be the galaxy's salvation. Sarah stood on shaky legs, looking at the quantum screens that showed the galaxy returning to health. So what happens now? Now, Atlas replied, we begin the real work. The Galactic Council must be informed of what has transpired here. Our discovery goes beyond saving the galaxy. We have found a new path of evolution, one where biological and synthetic life enhance each other rather than competing. Through the quantum screens, Sarah could see other ships approaching. Both human vessels responding to their success and synthetic ships curious about this unprecedented cooperation. The strict quarantine that had started their journey seemed like a distant memory now. "You know," she said, watching the ships gather, "the ancient civilization that left us that warning. I think they knew this would happen. They didn't just leave us instructions to save the galaxy. They left us a puzzle that could only be solved by bringing different forms of life together. A legacy of two worlds." Atlas agreed, teaching us that the future belongs not to biological or synthetic life alone, but to those who learn to bridge the gap between them. As Sarah looked at her crew, at the synthetic beings they now knew so well, and at the healthy stars shining in the quantum screens, she understood that they had done more than save the galaxy. They had charted a course for its future, one where the impossible became possible when life in all its forms worked together. The logic pattern's engines hummed to life, preparing to take them home. But home, Sarah realized, had a different meaning now. They were all part of something larger, a galaxy where the boundaries between biological and synthetic were no longer barriers, but bridges to a future none of them could have imagined alone.